Typically when BMW releases a new generation of M car, such as the M3, they pair it with a new S engine. Now typically these S engines are basically just standard BMW engines that have been modified specifically for high performance use. While the S55 might not have the notoriety of something like the N54, it's still a really awesome engine, makes a ton of power and has a lot of capability. So today I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about the BMW S55. With the E90 platform, BMW moves the M3 away from the inline six that a lot of BMW fans had come to know and love, and instead moved the E90 platform over to a V8. Now this was the S65 engine, and they made this change from inline six to V8 for a number of reasons which I won't go into in this video, but at the end of the day what really matters is that it pissed off and upset a lot of BMW enthusiasts. So with the next generation after the E90 with the F80, they decided to go back to the inline six design. Except this time around it wasn't naturally aspirated. They decided to strap some turbos to it and make it forced induction. Moving from naturally aspirated to forced induction is something that upset a lot of BMW enthusiasts because we are pretty easy to upset, kind of divas. But it's something that BMW had to do if they wanted to compete with modern cars. A lot of modern performance cars are forced induction. They're making a ton of power and a ton of low-end torque. And at the end of the day, you have limitations with a naturally aspirated engine. If they wanted to continue to compete and be the leader of the performance sedan market, they had to go with forced induction, which is exactly what they did. This new turbocharged engine in the F80 was named the S55, following the same naming convention as previous M3 generations with the S65 in the E90, the S54 in the E46, the S50 in the E36, and the S14 in the E30. The S55 engine is based on the N55, which is the engine that you'll see in a lot of BMWs like the 135i, 335i, 535i's, and so on. If you want more information on this, I recommend checking out our video covering N55 versus S55. We cover all the differences. I'll have it linked in one of these cards in the corners and down in the description. Recommend you check out that video as well. Now, when we're looking at some basic specs and information, we can see that the S55 is pretty well set up for a performance application. It's a 3-liter inline six engine with 2 turbos strapped to the side of it, and it uses an all aluminum design. So we've got an aluminum cylinder block and aluminum cylinder head. Now what's really important about the block itself is that it's a closed deck block, which is different than the N55 that it's based on, which uses an open deck block. We've covered this in other videos, but the important thing to note between an open deck and a closed deck is that a closed deck block has a lot more rigidity and stability for the cylinder walls, especially at the top of the cylinder where peak pressure is occurring during combustion. Basically what this means is that the S55 just has a stronger block, especially for forced induction use, which makes it just a better engine for forced induction, better engine for high performance applications. Inside the cylinder head, we have dual overhead cams with variable valve timing and variable valve lift, also known as vanos. This system uses a pair of electronically actuated solenoids that direct the flow of pressurized oil to the vanos gears to change lift and timing on the fly. On the side of the S55, you'll find 2 monoscroll turbochargers, each of which have cast-in exhaust manifolds. With this system, each turbo has its own bank, meaning each turbo is powered by 3 cylinders out of the 6 cylinders of the engine. With this twin turbo system came the need for a new intake system, exhaust system, and intercooling system. It's important to note that the S55 is vastly different than the N55 that it's based on because the N55 is a single turbo engine where the S55 is twin turbo. It's a big distinction. I'm not really sure exactly why BMW went from twin turbo on the N54 to single turbo on the N55 back to twin turbo on the S55. But it's something that's worth noting. Now BMW did this for a variety of reasons, but at the end of the day it basically came down to performance, especially on the track where your charger temperatures can end up getting really high, but with a system like this you can help maintain them, keep them down, especially over longer periods of time, thanks to liquid cooling. What's really impressive about the S55's twin turbo system is that it actually weighs exactly the same as the N55's single turbo system, at least according to BMW. This twin turbo system on the S55 is really capable of producing a lot of power, which I'll get into just a little bit later in the video. In terms of fueling, the S55 uses direct injectors and a double piston high pressure fuel pump, which is capable of flowing quite a bit of fuel compared to most high pressure fuel pumps used in direct injection vehicles. I mentioned earlier that the S55 was developed with track usage in mind, and part of that is improved oiling during high RPM usage. The S55 main bearings and crankshaft were slightly modified for this exact purpose. The pistons on the S55 were also improved and slightly stronger. They also use a graphite coating on the piston skirt, which is necessary due to the LDS coated cylinder liners. Interestingly enough, a lot of people claim that the S55 has a lightweight crankshaft, but it's only lightweight compared to the steel crankshaft found in the N55 30B0 which is the M235i engine, but it's actually 2.2 pounds heavier compared to the cast iron crankshaft found in the standard N55B30M0 engine. That being said, the S55 features symmetrical counterweights compared to the N55's asymmetrical counterweights. All in, the S55 is about 3% lighter than the outgoing S65 V8 engine, which is pretty impressive considering that it has two turbochargers strapped inside of it. Now, if you've never picked up a turbocharger, especially one with a cast-in exhaust manifold, they are pretty hefty, and especially some of the larger ones, they can get upwards of 50, 60, 70 pounds. So it's pretty impressive that BMW was able to keep the weight of the S55 so far down. Something which I find kind of interesting is the fact that there are 6 different versions of the S55, all of which make slightly different amounts of power. We've got a 360 horsepower version that appears in the M2 CS Racing, a 405 horsepower version that appears in the M2 Competition, a 425 horsepower version in the F80 M3 and the F82 M4, a 444 horsepower version in the later F80 M3 and the current M4 and the M2 CS, a 453 horsepower version in the M3 CS and the M4 CS, and a 493 horsepower version in the M4 GTS and M3 DTM Championship Edition, which had the addition of a water injection system. We can't have a BMW S55 video without talking about the crank hub failure issue because it is something that's worth noting, although I think it's blown out of proportion, and it's basically that on pre-2016 engines, the crank hub was a failure point and it could result in a spun crank hub, which would basically destroy your engine. Now the thing is, it is blown out of proportion and very few S55s have actually experienced this issue compared to the amount of S55s that have been produced. But it is worth noting a ton of S55s have had this repair kit sold by aftermarket companies compared to how few of them have actually broken. And what I mean by this is that some aftermarket companies were really good at marketing this and really good at selling this repair kit, making it seem like a massive issue, but at the end of the day, it's really not a major issue on the S55. Outside this crank hub issue, the S55 is a pretty reliable engine and pretty capable of making a lot of power, but it does suffer from common BMW issues. Most notably, you're gonna have high pressure fuel pump issues, excessive carbon buildup, and a couple of other things, but it's nothing too major. Where the S55 gets really interesting is with aftermarket performance, and that's really the biggest benefit of BMW ditching the naturally aspirated setup used in previous M3s in favor of forced induction. As mentioned a moment ago, in stock form the S55 makes anywhere from 360 to 493 horsepower, with most S55s sitting around 450 horsepower. As with most turbocharged cars, an intake, catless downpipe, and intercooler is one of the best ways to basically increase power on the S55, but none of that really matters without proper tuning. Tuning is where the S55 really shines because unlike some other direct injection turbocharged cars, something like the Ford EcoBoost, which have really small turbochargers that run out of steam very quickly, the S55 actually has adequately sized turbochargers and can make a pretty serious amount of peak power. Boot mod is a popular tuning solution for the S55, and a stage 2 car, which is intake and downpipe, is capable of producing 500 wheel horsepower and 540 wheel torque on garbage 91 octane fuel. If you change this over to ethanol with a blend such as E30, which is a pretty common percentage for most BMW tuning, you'll see these power figures increase to 530 wheel horsepower and 570 wheel torque. If you factor in a very conservative drivetrain loss of 10%, you'll see that these figures put the S55 right around 580 horsepower compared to the stock 450 horsepower. That's a pretty impressive gain considering nothing inside of the engine or turbochargers was changed. Just a quick little intake system, catless downpipe, ethanol fuel, and tuning. BMW's other turbocharged engines such as the N55 and N54 are also really capable and well known for making a lot of power with tuning, but not that level of power. What's even crazier about the S55 is thanks to that twin turbo system, if you were to swap those OEM turbos for hybrid turbos, which are typically your stock turbo with a modified core or a larger core, something like a pure stage 2 turbo setup, which is, I don't know, $3,000 is not a whole lot of money, you can produce 750 wheel horsepower with an S55. So that's a totally stock engine. Talking about like intake, intercooler, downpipe, modified turbos, and ethanol, you make 750 wheel horsepower. That's absolutely insane, and 10 or 15 years ago, this would have been borderline unheard of for so few modifications. I know we covered a lot in this video, but there are a few key things to remember. The S55 is a 3-liter inline-6 engine with 2 turbochargers strapped to the side of it. It uses a closed deck block, sodium-filled exhaust valves, a double-piston high-pressure fuel pump, and a lightweight rotating assembly. As stated at the start of this video, the S55 uses 75% of the same components as the N55, and those remaining 25% of the components were new developments, and those new developments were specifically for high performance use and track usage in mind. BMW made every single modification they needed to make in order to make the S55 super reliable on the track and really capable. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please smash the thumbs up button, get subscribed so you don't miss out on future videos. Check out all the other videos on the channel. We have a ton of videos covering a ton of different engines. Drop a comment down below letting me know what video you want to see in the future, or if I missed anything in this video. So if I missed anything, please let me know. I'll see you guys in the next video.